This is Blue Grit Radio, a podcast where we talk about lessons learned for and from first responders. It's a project that's all about making better cops and a better community, where we dive into topics such as health and wellness, mindset, leadership, family, and life itself. In this podcast and part of Blue Grit Wellness, my page on Instagram, I'm frequently posting about different realms of law enforcement, right? We're talking about recognizing these people that are on the front lines. So this episode highlights a whole faction of first responders that are often underrepresented in the media or even in these types of, empathizing and showing behind the badge, humanizing law enforcement and criminal justice professionals. It's also a realm that I think is highly underappreciated and vocalized. It's very much behind the scenes. Police can really get a nerve struck, if we compare ourselves to fire and how they are lauded and how they are loved. And I say that jokingly because whereas a lot of people do think that police get no love and no thanks, I don't think that's true. I don't find that to be true. I think we get plenty of respect, admiration, and praise from many people whose opinions are valuable. Many people, we see you, we hear you. So that's not an issue for me. But what I do want to highlight is that corrections is a profession that is way behind the scenes. They're not going around interacting in the community very frequently by normal default in uniform. They're not oftentimes, going about their day and grabbing a cup of coffee or having someone try to pay for it or hearing those thank yous. So I do want to take a moment to say, hey, corrections officers, we see you. You're very much on the team. You're a critical part of our team in the public safety team, but also as far as maintaining safety in the fabric of society, a very critical part in that. So thank you. This episode is going to be largely focused on, as many episodes, how do you become a good police officer, or what experiences might help you highlight those or develop those traits that you're going to need. And corrections is very much a fantastic realm for that. It's not just a segue for people. It is a very enriching, very fulfilling, and very beneficial career that a lot of people get into. Some people have the full intent to stay from the get-go. Other people see how it can blend into other realms or other factions in law enforcement. And some people did get into corrections with the intent to go to police, but actually found that they developed a niche. They developed a set of skills, specialized units, specialized assignments, and or promotion in leadership. So this episode, I will bring you multiple perspectives from our team to help highlight not only what a corrections career can do for you as a transition point if a police officer role is your ultimate goal, but also what it may afford you as far as your life, your lifestyle, your professional development, and your fulfillment in the criminal justice world. So without further ado, here we go. All right, ladies and gents, welcome back to Blue Grit Radio. This is your host, Eric, and today joining me are two of my team members, and we're going to be talking about corrections officer careers, right? So we're going to be talking about working in the jail, working in corrections, and how that can be a fruitful career for professional development or for your long-term work. So we'll just hop into it. Here today we have a returning guest, my recruiting officer, Brian Cortinas. Hi, Brian.
Hello.
Welcome back, man.
Thank you.
Long time no see. We spend way too much time together working on everything.
Hey, don't say that. We spend an adequate amount of time together. I could spend more time with you, Eric.
The right amount. That's so sweet. All right, and then we got Sergeant, newly crowned Sergeant Brandon Lee from the Kent Jail. How you doing, man?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, for sure. We could definitely spend more time together.
So holding hands on the beach.
Yeah, Brandon Lee is and has been a an asset and a liaison as far as our hiring process and getting people into our jail. But really, this episode is not all about us and these individuals, but is to highlight a few things. We talk about, and I talk about and write about the need for more police officers, like good people that want to take care of the community. But when we talk about first responders, there's a couple groups. Dispatchers is one, but the other huge one that's behind the scenes and does not get any amount close to the love that they deserve or the attention they deserve are corrections officers, right? They're literally behind the scenes. We can show up and do the Hollywood whatever and look all cool and exciting. We take someone to jail, but then, the story's not over, right? There's so much more in that to keep the community safe. So I'm going to do my best to not talk too much and turn it over to these gentlemen. But Brian, you've talked a little bit on here and other podcasts about how you got your start as a corrections officer. So I just kind of wanted to pitch it over to you for a little bit and share, what has helped you as far as that career before your current career as a law enforcement officer, a police officer.
Yeah, it kind of comes down to the experience. A lot of training too, but the experiences that you get there is you can't replicate in other jobs at all. Just to recap, I was 22 years old, trying to be a police officer, only testing for police officer jobs. And at that time, back in 2011, there were, 2 positions open and 1,000 applicants. And I was, a young kid with some college and no military. So it was Score Jail. They were opening up and they had a bunch of openings. And I figured, I never considered corrections, but it's better than mowing lawns, which is what I was doing at the time. So put my name in the hat and I got hired. And in the 3 years that I worked there, I got in my first fight with a guy who was high on meth. I got to de-escalate people in situations who wanted to fight and were angry and pissed off at the world. When I would have never gotten that if I continued, mowing lawns or if I went into sales or something else. So between the interview skills that I got, because in there, we have gang members. And so, part of one of the jobs that you have in the jail is classifying people and figuring out, what pods they can go in and whatnot. And I had an opportunity to be part of the gang investigations. So I got to investigate or, talk to gang members, and sometimes really powerful gang members who were, in the area that now I currently, police. So I got to, really experience that side. I got to be a defensive tactics instructor. And so I honed in my skills on learning the skills of defensive tactics, but then also coaching and teaching it to other people. There are so many things that I gained in my 3.5 years as a corrections officer that made me a really good candidate to be a police officer at the age of 25. It was, hands down the best thing I could have done for my career.
Yeah, that's a fantastic, super, all over the place crash course, right? You hit on all these different hats, a little bit of story, and we'll get back into there. But, as a hiring manager, like I hear all these examples of skills, like tangible skills that you're developing. But that is a really good reminder for me because, I harken back to when, early in my career, I didn't know if I wanted to do canine or I wanted to be like a proact kind of plainclothes officer. So gangs were a very high interest of mine. But I remember subscribing to, the email list, and most of the time it was that made an investigation really buckle down, or like a photo, like maybe it's a grainy photo, but there's this, something particular about this person's face or something particular about this tattoo, and it's super blurry, but where it is and what it looks like. But so many times it was a super engaged corrections officer that could make the identification, because you're spending so much time with these people, and oftentimes, exactly, that helped articulate the details of the case and like the pattern of violence, and like to know that they're a documented gang member. And oh no, they claim it was something different. Well, literally they were talking about how involved with the gang they were, for the last 4 months that I spent, the majority of my time with. So I think that's a really good reminder to the outsiders that don't know how deeply rooted, corrections officers are with not just public safety in that way, but in ongoing investigations as well. Brandon, I'm going to turn it over to you. So, you're new to the podcast, and for the guests, for the listeners as a new guest, tell us a little bit about what brought you into public safety, and what your experience has been like up until this point, working at the Kent Jail as a first line supervisor now.
Oh, yes. Man, I'm going to go back a little, kind of around 2012, about Brian's time. I was finishing up my senior year in criminal justice at Seattle U, and I was applying to a bunch of different agencies. And like Brian said at that time, there was like one position for every 9 million people applying. So it was super competitive and difficult. So besides finishing up with my bachelor's in that, I also went to Bellevue PD to volunteer there as a civilian for like crime prevention items. And then I also reserved as a Fife police officer, kind of like, what you guys were saying before, just trying to get as much experience as I could. I think one of the biggest things when I look back at the beginning of my career that's really helped me is putting myself out there in an uncomfortable, I guess, position, right? Mm-hmm. Born and raised in a little household, with super overprotective parents, right? So have always just kind of been sheltered my entire life.
Overprotective Asian parents?
I know.
No, never heard of it.
So being able to kind of do this, get out of my comfort zone, be able to really communicate and talk to people, that's really come a long ways between myself at the beginning and who I am now. So at that time, the Fife Police Department had an opening for corrections, and I figured, like, man, I might as well jump on this opportunity so I can, better build my skills in communication, hard skills, whether it's handcuffing, DT, and all that stuff. And then unfortunately in 2016, so I've been a reserve and also a corrections officer at Fife for about 3-ish years now. The jail over there in Fife shut down. So I had to kind of branch out and find another home. And luckily for me, coming with all this experience, I was able to kind of write down a big old list of pros and cons, where I wanted to go, where I didn't want to go, right? And some of the biggest things that were important to me at the time, culture was a big thing, right? At Fife, even though it was a smaller facility, I was really close to my coworkers. And I wanted small to mid-sized agency to continue that, right? I didn't want to just be a number. I wanted to, be around the department, people to know my name, people to ask about, hey, how's your family doing, all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Not somewhere where, you see these larger agencies where you pass by someone, you think they're new, but they've been there for 10 years. That's not what I was about.
Yeah.
Other things I was looking for too were career opportunity and growth. And I think the biggest thing that really attracted me was the corrections to police program that Kent has. I found it was super valuable and impressive that a city would want to continue on with people's aspirations, whether it wanted to be police or something else, promotion, to retain a good employee rather than see them leave to another department. So I thought that was pretty impressive. City council, mayor support, all that stuff was really important to me, and really ability to take time off. As I've gotten older, I've learned that I don't want to live to work, right? So I want to be able to enjoy my job, but also have time out to enjoy hobbies, spend time with friends and family. And Kent was by far the best place to fill in all these needs that really meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
So came to Kent in 2016 and around December, and I've been there since. Been different. Kent's really afforded me the opportunity, whether it's being part of this recruiting team, pepperball instructor. I was the admin officer before I got promoted to sergeant. Really being able to look at the behind the scenes on different things, whether it's like liabilities or stuff like that. So, and I've really enjoyed it. It's given me it's been a great career, and I think it still will continue to be. And really have no complaints about it.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I appreciate you taking us through the timeline because, a lot of candidates, I found what resonates with them is like kind of comparing someone's journey to their own, right? And to hear that they're doing some of the right things, they're like, man, I got a degree, but, I know I have a lot to learn, and where can I get my foot in the door? And timing's everything. And so I came in at a very fortunate time for me, but you guys came in at a much more difficult time in criminal justice. And now we're back at a more fortunate time for most candidates. And that's not to say that if you're not getting in somewhere right now, it's not to say you're not right for the job. It just might mean that you have certain things that you need to work on or certain skills that you could acquire. And that's what we're talking about this fantastic opportunity right now. So it's not just about Kent Jail. A lot of CO agencies are hiring. I want to rewind a little bit. You talk about getting older, and I reflect on that quite a bit too. And, and I do appreciate, and I do think that there's a time in life where you're in the thing and everything you want to do is learn about this exciting career that you've wanted for, whether it's, the last 5, 10, maybe your whole life, you've wanted this job. So you get in and you're going to dive in deep. You're going to spend all your extra time researching and reading and listening to this podcast just to be the best, criminal justice professional that you can be. But at the same time, after a little bit, you recognize that, hey, you got to take some time off and invest in yourself as a person so that you can show up better at work. And so that's what I try to preach too. Has anything helped you, helped inform that for you, Brandon? Or has it just been, just recognizing you're in a different chapter in life and you can work hard, play hard, take time off, go on vacations, and that all just feeds you better to be a leader and to be, to be an officer?
Yeah. So, man, by far at the beginning of my career, I was a big old workaholic, right? I would work thousands. I think even last year I worked like over 1,000 hours of overtime, right? So I'm just here grinding day in and day out, right? And really it was beginning of this year for me that the big change happened. My wife is a wonderful person, right? And she loves to give me,
of course she is. Especially if she's listening. She's
the biggest wisdom in the world. And a lot of it was like, hey, instead of grinding out hard, trying to make money, all that stuff, let's try to live in the moment a little more. And that for me, it really hit home, right? Where it was more so like, oh, I'm always worrying about what's in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, right? Worrying about career aspirations, all that stuff. And luckily enough, kind of like how you were saying, Kent has really been able to afford me the opportunity to either work a bunch, right, to secure my future financially, or like this year, I haven't worked a single full week at all this year. I've either taken a full week off, partial days off. Even before we started this podcast, I was telling both, I'm going to Vegas in about 2 weeks, and I just got back 2 weeks ago, right? So I'm trying to, be out on vacation.
You must be winning big there or something.
Hopefully, right? Hopefully. But, kind of, balancing that out. And I think that's what I found was important now, right? Having that work-life balance. And I know that might be a loose term nowadays, but it is really important for especially law enforcement, corrections to really have that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's something we talk about here a lot is that piece of wellness, right? Making sure you don't burn out. But what I appreciate about your experience is that you can toggle it, right? And, that not to deviate too much, but it is very relevant to this conversation about the career is that, I know that you've set you and your family up very well financially because you were willing, like in your younger years, you're grinding, you're saving, and just setting yourself up with financial decisions to make sure that you can have a more stable life. And I think that's very strategic. And everyone's gonna have to attack that differently. But just to know that there's the bandwidth where, hey, if you want to work a lot, you want to go through that season or that chapter of your life. But if you want to turn it down, there's the ability to do that.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, Brian, what's on your mind as we roll through all this stuff? Are you harking back to your years?
I mean, I have tons of stories, and I do want to take a moment and kind of ask Brandon, because we kind of started this podcast, and a lot of times you sit down in our little circles, Brandon, a lot of times he's over in the jail and grinding away, and then you and I are kind of in our nice little area over here together. We get to spitball ideas on recruiting, especially about corrections. And a lot of times we come to this idea, like how we started this podcast about like, oh, let's use corrections as a stepping stone. But, and it can be, and it, to me, and I say this all the time, there's no better job in the country that's better at preparing you to be a police officer than being a corrections officer. However, Brandon, how is it? I'm guessing you're done trying to do the CO to PO thing. You initially picked Kent because you liked that option, but this job, this career, it's affording you the life that you want. Yeah.
Yep.
You're traveling the amount that you want to travel.
Yep.
You've got a beautiful home, beautiful wife, beautiful kids, and this is a life that you and a lot of your coworkers experience, and this career has provided you. Right? I mean, I don't hear a lot of complaints from you guys saying that you don't get paid enough or you don't get enough time off, right?
No, absolutely. And kind of to hit that point too, like I came about to a point in my career. I'm no young buck anymore. I'm 33, and I know I'm still probably younger than both.
Oh, you're young.
I feel a little bit.
I wish I was 33. Yeah.
My back hurts when I get out of bed and stuff. But no, kind of like what you were saying, Brian. A lot of it was how, I am very, I feel very accomplished and gratified for the position I have right now. And one of the biggest things that, because at the beginning, when I was first started Kent, I was eligible for the CO to PO as a lateral after a year. And so 2017-18, I was really contemplating on whether or not I was going to make the jump or not. At the time, no kids, right? I think I was still dating at the time, so nothing was too set in stone. But it was so hard for me to leave my coworkers in that team environment. I enjoyed that so much where kind of before we started talking about podcasts, here at Kent Jail, we do indirect supervision. And just for the audience really quick, direct supervision is if you were in a unit or a pod by yourself or maybe a partner with X amount of inmates, it might be 50 to 100. Here at Kent Jail, we do indirect supervision. So we have one officer that cares for the 7 units we have. They go in, they pop in, they make sure everything's okay, chit-chat a little, then they move on. The structure and style has allowed us to, instead of allocate that one person, that officer, and that resource over there, to come to the booking area where we can tackle the workload up front or hang out or, really be together. And I think that's what I really, was looking for when I was searching for a different apartment. And that was, still is important to me today.
Yeah, that was kind of what was kind of going through my mind in listening to Brandon talk and just also knowing him and some of the officers that work in Kent. The career, the job that you have over there, even if it ends up being your career, it can be really fulfilling. The pay and the benefits, the retirement is all. It's a great profession to be in, and it not only being a stepping stone. I happened to get my start at SCORE with a lot of people who were doing the exact same thing that I was doing, right? Trying to kind of get your foot in the door in the law enforcement world. And I know a lot of guys that moved on to agencies all around the region. I know a lot of guys and gals that, while that was their intent initially, they did exactly what Brandon has done and remained at SCORE, remained being a corrections officer. And they live great lives. I mean, granted, I know I probably do a lot of the Facebook stalking. That's how I keep up on their lives and stuff. Maybe we're not texting all the time. But, you see they're going on trips and they've got beautiful homes and all that. So I just wanted to touch on that because, like you mentioned, Eric, people grow up dreaming of being a cop. How many, I go into big groups of people testing through public safety testing all the time. And there's never a single hand that goes up when I go, who dreamt about being a corrections officer when you got older? Nobody dreams of that as a job. So, that's kind of all that was kind of running through my head. You're muted.
Ooh.
Oh, podcasting with being virtual, huh? Love it.
How'd I get muted? Weird. So you don't know what you don't know, right? And there's all these things that get glorified in some ways through the media and movies and your favorite thing. So, you kind of think about policing as a young kid, or a lot of us do, firefighting, astronaut, like all these kid kind of jobs. And then it becomes an actual, a persistent interest for some people, but you don't have a lot of exposure to, COs or, except for, the ones in the media. Like, it's not, you don't see the camaraderie, it's not about that. You just see these really hardened people, and then the people that have to take care of that. Green Mile is a pretty sweet movie. I think it's a very high quality movie. No, but you don't see that, and you don't see a peek into the life. And so I love that Brandon's talked a little bit about that. You said a little bit about it, Brian, and we'll revisit that too. But also, what got Brandon involved in our recruiting sphere is working in his prior role, right? And so maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because that is something that I would think most people would not even recognize as the other behind the scenes aspect in the corrections world. Or, even if you want to talk a little bit about community engagement with corrections and work release and these other things outside of the building.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that, that we're doing here in Kent that I'm super proud of is kind of like what Eric was just briefly mentioning about. We have our work release program where we actually have inmates, after they get classified a second time, go out and provide direct community service for the city of Kent and also our neighboring cities like Auburn and everyone else. They'll do homeless camp cleanups, right? They'll assist with graffiti cleanups. They'll help at the food bank over at the senior center, help out over at the cemetery as well. So, folks, we are trying to, either build skill or to better rehabilitate, instead of just having them sit in jail and just watching TV all day long, right? We're able to get an additional service out of, the impact that they may have cost the city, but as well as incentivize them by giving them an additional third off their sentence for every 3 days that they do. So that way, it's kind of a win-win for everyone. And I think that's been super impactful for Kent. Gets recognized by city council, the mayor, and everyone else. Just regular everyday citizens come by and say, "Hey, thanks for cleaning up all this stuff, along the street." It's our city, right? We have to make sure that we're good about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I love that too, because not to get too much into the ideals, but not sometimes these conversations become really politicized. I don't know what doesn't get really politicized these days, but ultimately, not everyone needs to be in jail, but at the same time, not everyone can be out and about. So ultimately, regardless of the system we have right now, I like to harken it back to a podcast where Clay Surratt came on, and he's a veteran, and he's all about getting back in the community, building communities, and helping train other people. And so his thing is, the best medicine is always helping others. And so even if it's compelled, even if you get an incentive by, hey, lessen time, reduce time, I can't help but to think, and there's a positive bone in my body that can't help but to think that that's not healing. It's being able to clean up a mess and being able to beautify their community. Like, a lot of these folks, they live in the area, or they live here, and be able to take part in that to make something positive and have people come by and say, "Hey, thanks, nice job." I mean, if that doesn't uplift you and get you on the right track just a little bit, I don't know what does.
Yeah.
All right. Should we pivot to more stories? You guys got some stories. Sure. I do have one thought. And that is, there's so many pivots that happen in a criminal justice career. You might visualize things a certain way, and then you've recognized, Brandon, a lot of opportunities within the CO world to include advancing to leadership. And I think that most people would agree that getting into public service is a fantastic calling, but when you have the esteem of your peers and the buy-in and the credibility to lead and take on more responsibility, that's fantastic. And even prior to that, like, you had a pretty sweet schedule, right, in that prior role, working weekdays, daytime. And so that's something that most of us just think that we will abandon forever. As soon as you become a first responder, you're never going to have holidays off. You're never going to have weekends off. And just to recognize, hey, depending on your assignment and your agency, that's not necessarily true. Brian and I certainly have that aspect of cushiness where yeah, we work events and things like that on the weekends, but we love it. So it's a good fit. But, ultimately, we're actually not allowed to work on holidays. And so that's kind of foreign. But just to, paint a similar parallels, I came into this job thinking I was going to be a detective because that's what I was good at. I was good at analyzing things. I was good at studying. I was good at, just receiving information. I was not like a tactile, physical, mechanical minded, coordinated physically person, so, but, the interest and the passion just went a different way for me. And I am at the point now where, I'm going for a promotion. I'm probably never going to be a detective now. And that's okay, right? It's something that was of high interest to me, but I've had these other interests and other opportunities that just kind of took over. And I think things happen for a reason. I think that, it just aligns with what you're good at and what the agency need is. And you just kind of go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And just kind of like what you mentioned, before getting promoted and even signing up for the sergeant's test in May, those are the type of things that I was thinking about, right? The schedule, possible other opportunities that I will miss, right, after getting promoted. And, if that really, if I really wanted it, right, and, I had to really sit down and say, kind of like what you mentioned, I had a good skill set in certain things, but then I naturally developed, different skill sets based off of, what naturally came to me that I was strong in. Right. And I thought a lot of it was just, leadership. And part of that isn't something you can, there are good guides, good books, good, references out there, but to be able to be, to go out there, be genuine, to really care about your folks in the line. I think that's, the big difference that make, between a good supervisor and not.
Yeah. I love that. And I love what you brought about skill sets or what you just mentioned. And I just have this idea that popped up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you both, and whoever wants to answer, maybe both of you, but one at a time, or we could go to the next question. But I'm going to ask a question that may be akin to an oral board question. So this is going to be very helpful for those listening in that are trying to have their entry point into public safety. But my question is going to be in the vein of corrections. So in your corrections career, either of you, can you tell me about a time where you had to engage your team and problem solve a situation? Tell me what the situation was, tell me what you did, and tell me what the result was.
Putting us on the spot.
Holy cow. Who's up? Who's up?
So let me, I can start with that. It might not be the best example, but one of the biggest things that, I guess one of the challenges that I face as a supervisor is not having 20 people on all at the same time, like maybe larger facilities like King County or prisons or anything of that sort. So a lot of it is needing to be able to analyze and understand everyone's strengths and weaknesses. I have some officers that, train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I have some officers that maybe are a little older in their career, right? They aren't as nimble as they were before. So when I come into a situation like there was a few weeks ago when there was, police department comes down with an uncooperative subject, right? They might be intoxicated or coming off of drugs or alcohol. And then we have to safely subdue this subject, make sure we get a good pat search in. There aren't any other drugs on this person. So for them to overdose in the cell or any weapons on him to further harm himself or herself or others. A lot of it is like cell entries, right? I might have someone a female officer that's maybe 5'5", right? That's my backup. So how am I going to solve through this, right? And a lot of that is being able to communicate and work as a team, not with only our division, but also with the police department as well, right? Mm-hmm. Not being afraid to be like, hey guys, if you guys got 2 or 3 guys to skip there, can you send them down this way? We didn't make a cell entry on this guy because he may have, a weapon or anything of that sort, right? So really that big old communication piece, and it might be a little different because our training, it might be a little different from police training and how they enter and stuff like that. So it might be a quick little powwow of like, all right, if you have this, go and grab this body part. If I have this, I'll grab this body part and we'll go from there. And probably the same with, you guys in police. even if we're engaged in a use of force, there's a lot of communication that goes, amongst each other where, hey, what's the next step? Are we transitioning? Are you good to go? That kind of thing. So that's, I guess, my quick piece on that.
No, that's solid because, this exercise, a lot of people that listen and are listening they're trying to grasp this career and they're trying to grasp the testing process. So I'm going to give myself a pat on the back because not only does it highlight all the things you've learned and what you've been doing, but it's also helping people conceptualize, what skills did he highlight in that answer, and how do I apply a response like that to model how I talk about my customer service experience or my volunteer work with my church, working on this project where everything went haywire and I had to step in, right? So Brian, do you have anything on that mind or on your mind, or I can ask you another one?
No, I do. I have actually several things that come to mind, like a daily thing that would happen working at SCORE. We would house for many, many agencies. We would have our core member agencies, the Auburn and Renton and Federal Way, Des Moines, I think of SeaTac, Tukwila, Burien, maybe I forget some of them, but then we had a bunch of contract agencies as well. Well, we would get really, really, really busy. So, you have the intake area and you're bringing them in, like what he was talking about, path searching. You got to make sure you do good, thorough path searches because the liability of somebody sneaking some drugs in and, ODing, inside your cell, it's a big, big problem, big liability, right? People are coming in, they're high, they're drunk, they're mentally ill. We've got a lot of people coming in who are quote unquote issues, right? Take more time and you have to work through it. But there's times when you are just so busy that all the holding cells are getting filled up. You have the whole booking area that has people sitting in all these seats waiting to get processed. We need to take their pictures and their fingerprints. And now we have a team of officers here that need to work together cohesively to process these people as best as we can. So the teamwork in being able to work together and do a good, thorough job to the customer service. And I know it kind of sounds funny, talking about customer service with inmates, right? Or suspects. But really, these are people that we're interacting with. I don't have a bunch of weapons or tools on me, especially in the jail, right? I'm having to kind of keep them happy, but kind of keeping them informed exactly what we're trying to do. Hey, I'm going to treat you just like a regular person. I'm not treating you like an inmate. I'm not treating you, I'm no better than you, right? Mm-hmm. You whatever you did, you got yourself in the situation. You're here in the jail. Now let's go ahead and work through this. So it's working together as a team. It's practicing your customer service with these people. It's having to go hands on with the people that want to fight and all that stuff. It's kind of every single day you have an opportunity to practice skills that directly correlate with what you're doing out in the street. And then the one that really, especially in that whole scenario, you're having to deal with people, like I was saying, who are mentally ill, high, drunk, and angry. And truly, they dictate kind of what happens there. Mm-hmm. If they're angry and they're in a cell, there's no need for me to open that door and go get into use of force. I've seen it happen. I'm sure Brandon's seen it happen where it's like, hey, you're asking that CO, why the heck did you go in that cell when this person's obviously angry and wants to fight or wants to, start an issue? Keep the door closed. Well, it's kind of similar when you see it with police officers out in the street. Sometimes you'll see that video and you scratch your head and go, why did that cop do that? Why did they how did they get themselves in a situation? A lot of times it's because they push the pace, right? They're the ones that decide, the cop, they kind of puff their chest out, talk to me like that type of thing. And then they push the pace. But really, it's the suspect or it's the inmate that's kind of dictating what's occurring. So I have a lot of I kind of how I ramble. Look at me. I'm sitting here. If the video if this was being recorded on the video, you'd see I talk with my hands and all that.
Yeah, hands are everywhere right now. Yeah, it's a good thing we're in a different room,
even though it's audio.
You'd be hit in the face. Yeah,
there are so many things just in that one day. What I just described to you. That happens in one day in corrections at a lot of facilities. And so the experience that you get, like I said, it's unrivaled. And to me, it's a lot of fun. That challenge, right? That it's a mental challenge. It's different every single day. So yeah, there's a lot that translates.
Yeah, it's a great reminder because, I've had these little slices of, what the jail environment looks like or how I've interacted with that at certain times. But, I only worked a few shifts, like as part of my training in the jail, like a week. But, things that popped in mind from both your guys' examples are, really a highlight on team dynamics, right? It's not like the static thing. It's a very dynamic environment. You have not only the inmates that have a host of different personalities and temperaments and situations, right? There's a lot of extremely cooperative inmates, right? And they're
Yes.
trustees and they're working on helping things out. They clean things up and they're given certain privileges. And they're just really trying to get out sooner and they are able to, right? And they're fantastic, right? They're super respectful. And then there's also this dynamic of, you have all these competing interests. You have competing timelines. You have people that need to get to medical appointments, and you have people that need to get to court, and then you have low staffing. And so resource management, that's what Brandon was highlighting, and the need to communicate and the need to strategize that. But both of you are communicating in your examples. Like, these are excellent skills, and hopefully people listening in that had this idea that it's a control room and you hit a button and you let your buddy in and you open the slot. Like, no, it's like, yeah, that's a little piece of it at times, but also this ability to communicate and de-escalate. I can think of a host of times that we chased and fought with someone and we're basically carrying them into the jail, like kicking and screaming. But once they go through those doors, sometimes it's because the relationship they have from that prior officer, right? And I'm thinking of a certain sergeant that you all know. He would just, he'd just walk up really slowly and say, "Hey, are we gonna have a problem?" And they would be like, they'd hang their head no, or they just recognize him from their culture and say they were ashamed, right? It's a different ballgame. They're like, "Hey, whatever happened out there happened. Like, if you act as you should, we're gonna have zero problems. I'm even gonna accommodate you, right?" And kind of like you're saying, Brian, someone's flipping out, in the cell. I've seen a bunch of COs just walk up and say, "Hey, man, I want to get you food. I want to get you fresh clothes. Just when you're ready," and not to antagonize them, but like when you're ready on your time, like, you let me know. Just tell me you're done, and we will facilitate that. We will get you clean. We'll get you a shower. We'll get you your bed, hot food. Like, it's we're not trying to hurt you here, man. It's just part of the thing. And I think that that's what I really appreciate about the culture that I've observed at Kent, is that it's a lot like the culture on the street. Some cops might not like it that we go to a call and someone's having a bad day and we're like, "Hey, man," and we take it, if it's safe, and we kind of stoop down a little bit, lean in, like, "Hey, man, like, what's going on today?" Some people think that's unprofessional. I don't think that's the case. I think you're just leveling as people. We've seen a lot of people really react positively to that, and I love that we have this kind of more casual culture, because being a robot really isn't helpful when you're trying to empathize with humans as humans.
And if I can add, that word that you just used was empathize. Empathy, all of a sudden, I always thought of myself as being an empathetic person, but I didn't regularly interact with a bunch of homeless people or, drug addicted people, mentally ill people. And all of a sudden, I found myself in a profession where I was learning about these people and their families and their stories. They're telling me how they got to where they got, and how they were, on a path to being, maybe a college athlete, or, taking over their parents' business, but they got, hooked on oxys or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden now I'm on the street and I instantly see these people as people. And it's easy to get jaded in any career, right? But especially in corrections, especially in the police world. But what it did to me is it really prepared me to see everyone as human beings. You don't need to be a corrections officer to do that. However, what it did for me is it gave me interactions that I never would have had otherwise, and it's invaluable what that did for me there.
Yeah, just sure. To bounce off what Brian was mentioning, a lot of my buds went through the corrections to police program that we have here in Kent. And one of the biggest things that they mention is that they have such a better and almost easier time with transient subjects or folks that they have actually engaged with in, for the lack of a better word, live with while they're working as a corrections officer in Kent,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They see, they hear their stories, they see, their transition, whether it's better or for worse. If someone comes into the jail, like, holy cow, so and so, you look a lot thinner than when I last saw you. You doing okay, right? And then they'll go from maybe getting super ticked off that the officer arrested them to now they're completely engaged with you instead. So it's completely different. Like, again, going back to the successful officers in that program, a lot of them have such a better rapport and working relationship with those that are in essentially crisis when they're out, down on their luck, or maybe something drastic happens. So,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate you guys kind of detailing that, because ultimately, if you're in public service or you want to be, you should be in the business, or recognize that you're wanting to come into the business of helping people. Like, bottom line, right? There's all these different hats, and some behind the scenes and some frontline. But ultimately, if you're not in it to help elevate people and build them back up and help the community in a positive way, then you're in the wrong line altogether.
Absolutely.
Right? So, good highlight. So I think where we'll round it out is going back to Brandon, and tell us just, what are you looking for in a corrections officer candidate? Like, what is your ideal candidate? What are some of the traits you like to see? And, what do you think would enhance and build on the positive Kent jail culture that you have?
absolutely. Just probably similar to the police department, our staffing in our corrections division is getting younger and younger. We have a big generation that's retiring. And so that we have a lot of new officers that have this willingness to be a part of a team, help each other, and all that. What I specifically look for is someone who's motivated, someone has excellent work ethic. All these intangible things like show up on time to work. I can't teach you that, right? You're either already 21 plus years old and you have this, or you don't. I can teach you how to handcuff. I can teach you how to better communicate with the population that maybe you're not, used to talking to, right? I wasn't used to talking to the clientele that I hang out with today. But a lot of it is being a genuine person, and kind of like how we were talking about empathy and really just hitting that home. I can teach anyone this job. I can't teach you to be a good person. And so long as you have the willingness to learn, the willingness to make mistakes, own the mistakes, and learn from them, I think those candidates come out to be the best officers that we have.
Yeah, love that. Brian, you have anything to close with?
I do. We talked a lot about.
I'm going to give you a timer, though.
We've talked a lot about the job and the things that we're doing interacting with the inmates, and we talked a little bit about indirect supervision versus direct supervision. But you know what, because it's been almost 9 years now since I've been a corrections officer. But some of the things that I remember most, times I've never laughed harder, honestly, is my times with my guys and my girls there, my people. When we were in our break rooms, or we're up in the booking area and we weren't slammed, because we weren't slammed all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You get so close with those people, closer, I would argue, than the police officers do with their coworkers, because you are in a jail. You've got four walls around you. You're not driving to different calls. And you're spending all of your time with your people. And I remember shifts where my stomach hurt, my face hurt from smiling, right? My stomach hurt from those hard gut giggles. Especially, after you just dealt with that hilarious inmate who, maybe going through a crisis, and you're being professional at the time, but when you're done dealing with them, some of the things they said, and you experienced it with some of your best friends. I'm still really close with some of my guys there back at SCORE. I'll drop their names, Sobchak and T, and I love my guy LA and Carlin. Those are people that I experienced things with them that. I guess similar to a lot of times what we hear with people coming out of the military, they're like, "Oh, I want that feeling of camaraderie. I want
Mm-hmm.
that brotherhood. I'm lacking that in this sales job, or I'm lacking that in this, IT job, wherever it is." you get that just as much in the corrections world as you do in the police, if not more. It is a fun job. In my opinion, I had so much fun at SCORE. So while it does do all those things to challenge you or to make you a better candidate as a police officer, and it does have all the good pay and the good benefits and all that, but it's also it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed my time being a corrections officer. So that's all I wanted to add is man, it's a blast.
No, that's a good highlight, right? Because it's about work-life balance and work-life quality, and who you do the job with is a huge thing. And so that's why, me and Brian, when we came into recruiting, we just wanted to let people in. We wanted to let you know the process. That's part of why we even started a lot of these episodes. Just take away the curtain, take away the mystique, and come in, like, meet our people. I want you to be as excited about our people as we are excited about you as a candidate. Same thing for the Kent Jail, right? So Brandon's been doing tours and Brian started doing tours. And it's like, if you're listening and you or someone is kind of dipping their toe, then just reach out. Send us an email. We'll get it scheduled up right away. And it's just a super casual tour, right? You get to see the environment you'll be working in. You get to meet people, see like, hey, how do you feel about these being your future coworkers? And really to expand that outside of our department, it's like, people ask like what we do for recruiting, what's helped. And I'd say do that, right? Just get to connect with the people and look at them at your future coworkers, and it'll all work out, right? There's enough good talent out there, enough good people that want to do a meaningful job. And so that's what this is all about. Brandon, anything last closing thoughts?
No, thank you for having me on. And if anyone's listening, like kind of what you, just to echo you, feel free to reach out to us, right? I'm more than willing to give people opportunity, educate you on whether or not this would be a good fit for you or anything of that sort. So, but yeah, thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And we will have the contact information in the show notes and how to get in touch with us via Instagram at Our Future Cops, our OUR Future Cops. And thanks again for listening. Again, like always, like, share, rate the podcast so it can just reach out and help more people. Until next time.